Welcome to the Inner Voice Podcast with the Conscious Living Coach. Join your host Jennifer Mackenzie and guests as they delve deep into the mind, spiritual practices, and holistic well-being. What does your inner voice say to you?
Hello and welcome to another episode of That Inner Voice podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Mackenzie, the Conscious Living Coach, owner of Lunar Spirit Wellbeing. If you are watching on YouTube, please give us a like and a subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episodes. And if you're listening on the audio, please do leave us a review. And today I am joined by Rachel Peru. Hello, Rachel. Rachel is a silver curved model. And I'm excited to be talking to you today about your journey and raising some awareness for midlife women.
Yay! Thank you so much. And I feel like the tables are turned now. It's your turn to interview me.
It's because I came on Out of the Bubble podcast, didn't I?
Yes.
It's over about a year ago now. I'm sure it came up on my memories. So that was great. And it's nice to now have you in the hot seat to hear about you and your journey. So if you just tell the listeners and viewers, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I am a professional model, which I started this new career at the age of 46. I'm now 51. So I call myself a silver curve model because I'm a UK size 14-16, so I'm classed as a curve model. I'm an midlife influencer and host of the Out of the Bubble podcast. I'm generally just championing things that, all positive for midlife women.
I love that. And I follow you and watch your journey and awe of lots of things that you do and love your work. So when you said that you changed your career in midlife, because 40 plus is considered midlife, isn't it? And so what did you do before? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, I mean, in my 20s and 30s, if I'm honest, I didn't really have a kind of career. I was in retail management. I did lots of different jobs. It paid the bills. It was never a passion of mine. It was just a kind of job to go to work. And I think, I'm now 51. I came from the generation where your parents very much were like, find a job when you leave school and that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And so I kind of just bumbled my way through my 20s and 30s until I had kids. And then I've got 3 children, and as they started to get a little bit older, I actually thought, well, I'll do some early years nursery school type teaching because it fits in with school hours, and it was just it worked with the family life, and I enjoyed that. And at the same time, I found myself getting divorced at 39, 40, just coming up to my 40th birthday. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll take this seriously. Went back to university and got an education studies degree. And thought that the next 20, 30 years will be teaching. I thought that was going to be my next chapter. And I was really happy about that. I would have loved it. And I was loving it. So I got my degree at 41. And life has a way of not turning out how you think it's going to do. My eldest daughter quite openly talks about this, so I don't feel uncomfortable sharing it. But my eldest daughter really struggled with her really bad mental health problems. So she was acute anxiety, agoraphobia, which resulted in homeschooling, which then resulted in me leaving my work and having to be at home full time. So it was obviously it was really traumatic time, but also for me as a woman that had just gone through this journey and thinking, I've got this next career sorted out, found myself back at home and, I'd lost that. So I really knocked my confidence. And it was during that time that a friend kindly volunteered us to do a Macmillan fashion show, volunteering for a charity. Said yes, never done anything like that before. Never would have had the confidence to do anything like that before, to be honest. And I loved it. Had several gin and tonics, came away smiling, and then couldn't wait to do it again. And I continued, and I'll still volunteer for them every year now. I always will do. And so I did it for about 5 or 6 years. And got really good feedback from photographers, and there was a couple of professional models involved. And they said, have you thought about coming on and joining? And so I just applied for some model agencies, thinking if I get some work locally, I live near Leeds, then it would be quite a nice hobby and a nice thing to do. And got signed with a London agency within the first month. And so then I thought, okay, I've got to take this seriously now. And I love it. I never would have imagined I would be doing what I'm doing now.
Oh, that's fantastic. It is, yeah, it is fantastic that how kind of life puts you in these situations. And
Yeah.
do you feel like that this is your purpose now?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've come into my own now, and it's taken me a long time to get that, and I didn't have that confidence to go with it, to go with any dreams when I was younger, whereas now I'm really ambitious, driven, and I feel like it's something that I'm really comfortable with, and particularly because I do a lot of, I'm probably best known for my lingerie work. You don't often see many 50-year-old models in shop windows for big campaigns, and I've managed to do that. So I find that's really become my passion now and my purpose.
And I love that. And I think that's so important that we see that, because we're just surrounded by these very young, very slim models. And that's what I was bombarded with when I was growing up in all the magazines and on TV and everything. It wasn't, there was no diversity. Mainly they were Caucasian women as well.
Yeah.
And then kind of heterosexual families as well, which what you saw on adverts was literally like the husband, the wife, and the two children, one boy and one girl, and and that was the general senses of everything that we were exposed to. Now let's talk about confidence then, because you said you wouldn't have had the confidence to do these things when you were younger.
Yeah.
What was your confidence like? Well, how did you feel? And then what does sort of confidence mean to you now?
I think if I look back now at the kind of a younger girl in me, I always wanted to be confident, and I could imagine what that felt like and what I could do with it if I had it, but I could never quite grasp it. I could never quite get there. And so my lack of self-belief, my lack of confidence held me back from trying to do anything. So I would always be the one that would, if a group of friends, even in my 20s, were playing tennis, I'd never had any lessons, I'd never played before, didn't, I had big boobs. So I would be the one that would sit out on the sidelines and watch. And I stopped myself from taking part in life. And I did do lots of things. I'd managed to mask it. But the overall feeling was that I just wasn't living life to my full potential, because I was always second guessing myself and holding myself back. And I think now that I've found it, it's like a revelation, because it's like, well, you can actually try anything. And if I fail, so what? At least I'll have learned something along the way. And I think it's just a difference. It's like a light bulb's gone on, and now they won't turn off, which is good.
Yes. And do you think confidence is something that is built on?
Yeah, definitely. Do you know what I did because I got my divorce at my 40th, and I'd been with my first husband since I was ages like 16, 17. So it's a long time to be with the same person. And you've got to then rediscover who you are, and how much you can push yourself out of that comfort zone. So for my 40th, I'm terrified of heights, and I did a tandem skydive for charity, because I wanted to go into that next decade feeling brave. And every time I did something like that, once I did that, it was like, okay, you did that. And it's like building up a bank of memories of all the positive stuff that's like building blocks. And the more you do, the more you can see, actually, I'm capable of so much more. And that's how I built my confidence.
I love that. And you mentioned then about masking as well. So when your younger self, would people have described you as confident, or was that something that people
would have described me as shy? I mean, I'm one of those kind of, is it because I'm an introvert, really, but then there's a part of me, like I did drama at school. I love drama, and I'm doing it again now, but I wanted to do acting. And I suppose the modeling side of me, there is something in me that likes the extrovert, but deep down, actually, I'm an introvert. So I was always classed as the shy one. I was surrounded by quite loud friends and I was part of that group, but it would always be me on the sidelines and letting them have their moment in the spotlight, and me being kind of behind them, joining in, but from a distance.
Because we do that a lot, don't we, as women, young women, even older women, but women in general, we mask. parts of ourselves, don't we? And no one really knows what's going on in that internal world. So it's like, I remember, like, I would be very outgoing, but then that got bullied out of me, which then I became painfully shy. And then it isn't now till, like, I'm turning 40 this year, so it's like now I'm like, I just have this different type of confidence. It feels very different. Is that what it was like for you?
Yeah, definitely. It does feel there is that kind of time ticking moment. I think when you get in your 40s, it's like, okay, you can't mess around now. This is it. You've got, and it's a cliche, but it's true. And I think now that I've turned 50, even more so, it's like, okay, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Because you can't waste it. But equally, there's that something in me now where I've stopped worrying about other people's judgments. I've stopped worrying about, and it's letting go of all that I think is really hard to do when you're younger.
Yeah.
And I think you get that new sense of security in yourself as you age.
Do you feel that you've know yourself a lot better now?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I know my boundaries are there. My boundaries are stronger. I know what I will and won't accept.
Yeah.
And I think that comes from having that self-confidence and knowing that, whatever's going on in life, you'll always be all right because you've got yourself there. I was always looking for other people to back me for kind of self-validation when I was younger because I didn't believe in myself. Whereas now I believe in myself, I'm my biggest backer. And I think that's the difference.
Be your biggest fan.
Exactly.
Not your own biggest fan.
Yeah.
It's like champion yourself.
Definitely. Exactly. Yeah.
So as this is a mental health podcast, you touched on your daughter having mental health struggles. Have you faced any of your own like mental health struggles going through a divorce, going through like these big changes?
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I suffered with anxiety, and it wasn't really talked about, when I was kind of 17, 18, and I think that was partly because I was painfully shy and pushing myself all the time, and you have to keep up with that, and that's quite tiring. And then when I got divorced, obviously I really struggled. It was a kind of, especially for a couple of years, I ended up getting some medication and saw a therapist, and I'm so glad I did because I wouldn't have come out the other end of it as strong as I did. Having the therapy was a massive help for me. I think everybody should have that opportunity if they can, because I think it's just to get some clarification out, get it all out of your head instead of it going round and round and round, and those feelings of being a failure because you've not continued that perfect marriage, and because it was me that decided to leave, and so I think it's been real kind of learning curve for me that particular time. I learned a lot about myself.
Do you think like in these times of struggle, that's when you truly start to kind of get to know yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm going through it again, if I'm honest, because I'm now going through the menopause and I'm suddenly having huge anxiety for no reason whatsoever. And I know that it's linked to, I've talked to the doctor about it. It's something that I'm learning to live with. But again, it's making me manage it and learning to understand how I can manage it myself and what I need to do. And it is like going through another process of learning more about myself. It's kind of ongoing, isn't it? It's never a done deal.
Yeah, self-development and self-learning is just it's never done, is it?
No.
It's a continuum, and then we have these I don't know, like I find some people's maybe mindset around it is that you're supposed to be a certain way and you can't change, and you've got to stay like that. Just because you've decided that you want to do one thing, that means you've got to stick with it for the rest of your life. But that's not how life goes, is it? Because as we have these outer experiences, our internal world changes as well, and we're growing. But I always describe it as we're coming home to ourselves, because we're conditioned so much as little people by our caregivers, not like intentionally, but that's just what happens. We pass it on to generation, and then as we get older, I find that we're stripping layers rather than adding to them, sort of thing. We're stripping those layers and then becoming our true selves.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel more like myself when I was 10 years old. Inside now, I feel more like that girl again than I ever have done before.
Mm. And
Which is it's a lovely feeling, actually.
I feel like I know myself now, like, and I know who I am. I'm confident, like strong-minded, independent. Whereas before, I would be a little bit lost. I wouldn't really know who I was. But like, oh, I should be acting this way. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. So how did you kind of let go of those conditions and those society norms?
I think I really pushed myself out of my comfort zone. So I did. So I did do the skydive, and then I went to Uganda and volunteered to work in an orphanage. And I didn't know anybody, so I went off traveling. I went to India. I really pushed myself out of a comfort zone to go meet different people that were completely out of my circle. So I wanted life to be as diverse as possible. You know, like my social media feed is just full of diversity. I didn't want to see the same group of people that I'd always seen. And there's nothing wrong with that group of people, but that's not enough to broaden my horizon, broaden my way of thinking. And so it was really about trying lots of different things. And being open to trying different things and meeting different people and listening to other people's perspectives.
So would you say advice to women, you know, men, anybody watching this or listening to this, what would your like advice be to them if they're feeling like they're stuck or they're hankering for something and they're not
I think I'm a really big believer in following your intuition. What's your gut telling you to do? And I think you can only ignore that for so long before it starts damaging you, whether it comes out in an illness or I think it does manifest itself out. And I think you've got to listen to that. So if there's something that you know you really would like to do, even just start reading about it. Take that first step. Just start building blocks, read about it, go and do some research, join a class. It's that first step's the hardest thing. But I think it doesn't have to be a massive step. You don't have to suddenly know everything about a subject, but just take that first step and also say it out loud to somebody. Because I think if you talk about it, you always think in your head, somebody's going to judge you and say, well, you know, what do you want to do that for? That's ridiculous. When actually most of the time people will say, oh, wow, that's amazing. That's a great idea. And then you'll think, oh, okay, maybe I'm not imagining these things. I can do it.
Yeah, that's good advice. So you talked about like changing career later in life. What advice would you give to people that want to do the same? Because I don't know, I've like been thinking about my own life right recently. You know that I spoke to you the other night, but in the garden yesterday, I was like, I don't know if I want to do what I do anymore. I was just like, this is the first time I've said this out loud to anyone, Rachel. And I'm just like saying it now on my podcast. It's like I'm not sure that I want to do this.
But I think society puts so much pressure on us to think that we've got to be in one box for a whole of our lives, and we really don't have to be. And I think taking that pressure off yourself and saying to yourself, actually, it's okay if I don't want to do what I'm doing right now. I can give myself permission to go and explore another avenue, and sit with that and be okay with it, because it's scary. But unless you try things, how do you ever know? I always think I'd rather know I've tried something and it maybe not worked out, but then I found that something else will come off the back of it that's taken me down a different direction. And I think just keeping that open mind and giving yourself permission to think.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Giving yourself permission to want something different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And despite what anybody else would think or say, or
exactly, it's your life, isn't it? You know, it's your life, and who knows what you can achieve by just thinking outside the box a bit and thinking, okay, well, what would life look like if I was doing this instead of this?
Yeah. So these comfort zones are there to keep us the same and keep us safe, really, aren't they? But nothing great comes from them sometimes, but you know, it's the same. Nothing great comes from having that bravery to take that first step out of that comfort zone. Opens up those doors of opportunity. Look how what that did for you with
exactly
doing the modeling for Macmillan, and then suddenly all these, you know, doors of opportunity open, and now this is your profession.
I mean, I would never, if I hadn't said yes to my friend and thought, well, I'll go along for some fun, I would never have, you know, after that. But as soon as I started modeling, within the first year, I was on a plane to the Bahamas modeling with Ashley Graham and Lizzo. You know, that would never have happened. And before that, I'll be honest, when I went to the airport, my husband came with me. I was in tears in the toilet at Heathrow Airport because I was so scared of making a fool of myself. I've had that huge imposter syndrome, thinking, what the hell, who the hell do I think I am at 47 going to model swimwear? But you've got to get through that uncomfortable part to get to the good bits.
So comfort zones. If you're feeling like you're in one, step out. Do that brave thing and step out of the comfort zone. So touching a bit more then on like mental health, how was it then as a mum from this outside point of view, then as a mum of a child who was suffering from mental health? And agoraphobia is a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's heartbreaking to watch. You feel helpless, and it's something that I really struggled to get the right support for and to learn to understand it myself, because nothing prepares you for it. It's, you know, it's been a real journey, and luckily she's out the other end of it, and she's had the support. But it's difficult. It's really difficult, and other people's attitudes in society are really difficult because friends don't understand necessarily what's going on. So you do feel, as a parent, I felt judged. I felt like I'd failed, and I think because people around me just didn't get it, and so I didn't have anyone to talk to about it, because so you become isolated yourself. So I think it's really important that we start these conversations and get it out in the open.
Yeah, exactly, because it's not just the person that is suffering with the mental health. It's everybody around them. That then is going through it as well. And I'd like to see a lot more support for parents, for partners of people that are going through some difficulties. Like, even if it's just knowing kind of how you can support them, knowing what to say, not what to say, and those sort of things. Because it's, if you haven't sort of been through it, it is like, well, how do I handle this? What do I say? What do I do?
It's difficult. It's really difficult. And I think you spend a lot of time, I certainly spent a lot of time and energy getting the right help and support, when having to really ask, you know, shout loudly for it, because it took a long time to get in place. And then you're forgotten about, because, you know, obviously the focus is on the person that's not well, but it's all the people on the periphery that are supporting as well that need that.
Yeah. Did you get any support then? Did you get any support? Or
I did manage to get myself a therapist, because without that I would have really struggled.
So what sort of support did you get for your daughter in the end?
CAMS eventually were involved, and then we did get the education through the local authority.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what advice would you give to other parents then that are going through that too? Because I know it's difficult, and some people haven't got that fight in them. They haven't got the push, and they don't know who to turn to or what to do.
I think, looking back now with retrospect, I wish I'd listened more to my daughter at the beginning about how she was feeling, rather than what the experts were telling me about why she wasn't going to go to school and why she wasn't getting out of bed. And, you know, I should have listened more to her right at the beginning. So I think it is spending that time really listening. You might not understand it, but they need to feel like you're hearing them.
Okay. So they need to feel seen and heard. I find that a lot with young people that I deal with. It's like, and nobody's listening to me. He's listening to me. They're making me do this. They're making me go to school. They're making me do this, and it's really, really not helping my mental health. That's something I hear a lot. And I don't think they should be forced to go to school.
Well, if it's, I mean, I clearly, looking back now, I'm so glad we got the education sorted out in the end. But, I went through a period of taking her to a kind of special school, and I would literally drive in the car every day for 6 months, and not once did I get out of the car. And they still forced me. The authorities and the education system had all this pressure on me to get her there. And if you don't get her there, you're failing her and you're failing as a mum, and it's too much. And I think if I'd have really listened more instead of getting too scared by what they were saying, then I would have stopped that much sooner.
But it's that fear, isn't it, that those authoritative people put into us, because we see them as authoritative, we see them as like experts in their field, but what really is important is what's best for that child, what's best for you as a family.
And she got her education, she got her GCSEs, she just did it in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. But this is what's kind of a bugbear of mine with the system, is because it's one thing and it's one box and one size fits all. But with so much more awareness of neurodiversity, and people aren't always the same, so one child can be able to sit in a classroom and do the work and not and be quite happy doing that. And then the child next to them, is not necessarily anything wrong with them, it's just that their brain will work differently, and they're not going to be able to sit still and take in the information the same. Like when I was learning like to teach and stuff like that, like I'm sure then when you learned to teach, did you get taught about I learned to teach like Reiki and other like academics, not academically in schools, but for what I teach, but about different styles of learning. Did you get taught that? But I don't find that they use that so much in schools.
They talk about it, but then they don't actually put it into practice.
So
all the kinesthetics, and they just don't actually.
It as robots, you must all sit here facing the front, doing your work, and be quiet. And that's not necessarily how a lot of people work. Certainly I didn't work like that. I didn't want to be quiet, sit still, or face the front.
And actually it sets the tone for the rest of your life then, though, doesn't it? Because if you're in that environment and it doesn't suit you, but you're told you've got to fit in and conform, then that kind of sends that message to you for the rest of your adult life. It's not a good place to start off, is it?
No, not at all. So big changes really that need to happen in that sense. And like I'm seeing so many more changes in the way that we're seeing people more on social media. We're seeing more about gender diversity. We're seeing more about ethnic diversity, which is amazing. But do you still feel there's more to be done there?
Yeah, definitely. I still think there's a lot of tick boxing going on. I think there's still a lot of tokenism, but you need to start there, because then consumers will use their voice and say, well, actually, this is what we want to see. So they'll have to listen. But I still do think there's quite a lot of tick boxing. But I think it's definitely, in the last couple of years, it really has improved massively. I'd say ageism is probably still at the bottom of the pile. There's still a lot of ageism in society. And I think that's kind of like the last taboo.
I was going to say, have you faced any kind of negativity from being
it's harder to get the work as an older model. There's not as many campaigns for older women, and usually you're tick boxed. Again, I've got grey hair, so I'm usually the like token gesture of a grey-haired woman. And I mean, my first job was for a big pharmaceutical company, and I played a grandma with quite old grandchildren against a man that was 20 years older than me, just because I had grey hair. And I kind of thought, actually, I don't want, and it was proper like stand a chairlift type job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I won't talk about it, didn't I? And the worst thing is it got sent around people's houses and it was distributed in leaflets and stuff. So many people saw it. But anyway, I just kind of thought, is this really what I'm going to be pigeonholed just because I've got grey hair? They think that you've grey hair and you're a granny. And I think that's probably spurred me more to make sure I'm not like that.
Yeah, but that's not a true representation of of what life is,
No.
because you don't just like, you're not a granny because you've got grey hair.
Exactly. Yeah. So I still think we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, massively about ageism, and types
Particularly for women. I think it's harder for women with ageism.
Yeah, because we're sold products like they're going out of fashion to look
Anti-Asian.
yes.
Yeah.
But we're told that from like a young age.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, you must look younger than you are. You must buy this product. You must be a certain weight. You must act a certain way. And it's like, well, you're old. You can't act like that.
Yeah.
Who said?
I do think that there's women above me now that I look up to and see they're making a change. And I do think the more we do it, we're helping the generation below us. It's got to be that intergenerational conversation, because younger girls need to see that you don't have to be scared of getting older, and that you don't just jump off a cliff and that's it, never to be seen again. We need to show that our bodies age naturally, but we're still okay with that, and we can still enjoy being in our bodies. And we need to have these intergenerational conversations and show them that it's okay.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, when I was younger, I thought 40 was really old.
Yeah, I did. I remember my mum being 40, thinking, "Gosh, that's it." I did think, "Oh, well, that's she's going to be quiet now." It's just
You don't have to get to a certain age and not be quiet.
No,
I don't see that happening at all for me.
No, I don't either. And I don't. I see so many women around me that would exactly feel the same. I think it's changed. I think we've found our voice now as older women.
Long gone are the 1950s stereotypes where women have to get married, stay at home, have children, and live in the kitchen.
Exactly.
Please their man. Or
Yeah. I think we're taking control. We're taking control of our lives, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. But that was the norm, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
It was the norm back then that women were to be seen and not heard. Stay at home.
Yeah.
I just laugh about it because it seems absolutely ridiculous to me. I think,
but you can't imagine somebody saying "be quiet" whilst I'm listening to the TV at the moment. You've got to shush, or you're like, "Well, what?
Shush me?
Yeah.
Did you just shush me?" Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's still so much work to be done. With humanity. I think, with mental health, with how we treat addicts, how we treat the mind and the body separately when they're really, really not. There's lots of work. Kindness, yes, the way we treat each other. I think it's still, but women like you are champion for that, and like other women can look up to you and be like, well, wow, it gives me now permission to do that. It gives me a hope that I don't have to stay stuck in that little box where someone's put me. I can keep shouting about it. You've got quite a good large following on Instagram.
But I've got 21,000 today. That'll probably go back down by the end of the day. But and I do. It's something that I really feel that I can, if I can contribute to the conversation to try and lift another person up, another woman up, then it's got to be worth doing. And I would rather be part of that conversation than sit on the sidelines and watch it.
So why do you do what you do now then?
Because I love it. I really get pleasure out of it. It lifts me up, doing the podcast, doing the modeling, getting the jobs that do push those boundaries. It empowers me, and it makes me feel like I can create a ripple effect, and that fills me with joy. The Facebook group, I love doing that. I just love seeing people connecting with each other from something that I've created. And so that's what drives me, really, those connections with women, and seeing that we're all coming together and supporting one another is what drives me, really.
And that connection is so important. So often felt to feel like we're the only one going through it, or like we haven't got anyone to talk to, or no one's going to understand. But in reality, when we start these opening conversations, we can actually find out that people are going through similar things. They have been there, they have got through it. And it's a connection to me is like the number one priority, is to get is speaking out as well. And so how is like speaking out then? And I know you've got your podcast, Out of the Bubble. What's your podcast about? I know what it's about, but
it's aimed at women that are over 40 that have either been through, trials and tribulations of life, come out the other end and survived, and are thriving now. And so it's changing the perception and allowing women over 40 to share their stories. And they're all so different. Everyone's got a story to tell. And I really do believe that by sharing them, another woman might be sat at her kitchen table listening to this woman's story, and she can completely relate to it. And it might spark something in her to make a change that she wants to make. So it's about sharing stories. It's just about getting midlife women's stories out there and creating a platform that they maybe wouldn't have had the opportunity to be visible otherwise.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that, with that message. Yeah, absolutely. Sharing's powerful, and it's healing as well. It's healing. It promotes inner healing when you say it out loud, and then people go, I feel you, I see you, I get you. That is powerful healing. And I encourage people to have a voice, speak it, share it when you're ready.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, it's when you're ready, isn't it? And I do wonder whether, because I did go through what I did with my daughter, and I felt so alienated, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it that could really relate. Maybe that's why I feel so passionately about making sure that there is these connections and getting stories out there that other women can listen to and feel like they're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I went through some of the hardest stuff of my life by myself. And it was lonely and terrifying because doctors don't even get me started on that. But and like nobody got it. But then if I'd have maybe had what we have now, and in this online space and in these podcasts, I'm talking about sort of 10, 15 years ago, where there wasn't this. There wasn't really much social media. I think we had MySpace or something like that. But there wasn't. And there was, my friends didn't understand. I mean, most of them just disappeared, or they didn't know. They didn't want to know. You're going for a breakdown. But it's these things I find are so important. And I have a kind of love-hate relationship with social media because on one hand, I love the connections that it creates. And you can connect with people from all over the world, all different walks of life, and you can learn so much and connect with it. But then there's also that other side where it's very damaging. So I kind of have the love relationship with it.
I do. I do. I completely agree. I do. I think there's lots of really damaging messages that come out through social media, particularly for the younger generation. I think maybe it's easier to navigate as you get older because you can see through it. Whereas as a younger woman, there's so much pressure to fit into society, and social media just piles that on in tenfold. The way you're meant to look, the way you're meant to dress, and where you go, who you're seen with. It's just too much.
What's your views on influencers?
I don't like to use it for myself. If I'm classed as one, I'd rather be an inspirer, and so I don't. It's not something that I feel particularly comfortable with. But I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because there's got to be people out there that you look up to. I have people on social media that I look up to and follow. And it's not that I'm envious of them, but there's parts of me that think, oh, that's fantastic. I'd love to try something like that. How could I do that? And that inspires me. And so it's good to have those people. But if people are just on there to make money without the ethics behind it and without the integrity, then I think it's an issue. And unfortunately, there's a large part of that.
And I find a lot of our younger generation are following just people, which I have adult and teenage daughters. It's so I know that they follow some people that I'm like, what are you following them for? What it's because they're so influential at that age, influence And it's like, you know, I find it that it needs to be a bit more regulated.
Yeah, definitely. It really does. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and things like cyberbullying,
Yeah.
the amount of access that people can have to you on
Yeah.
social media, sitting behind a keyboard,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, throwing
Yeah.
shady comments on, you know, people that are just living their best life and doing well, their best for other people.
Yeah.
You still get that underhanded stuff sometimes
Yeah.
from people. But you know, hurt people, don't they? And it's just
Well,
like,
they do, which is sad, but then but like you say, the regulation needs to be there to prevent it, and at the moment it's not.
no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, especially on TikTok is the worst.
I've been on there a little bit, but it's something that I'm trying to avoid if I can.
Yeah, but there's so much. There's no regulations on there at all. I mean, some of the things that I've actually seen on there that I'm like, wow. So I banned mine from TikTok.
Yeah.
You know,
It's dangerous.
not going on TikTok. I'm not going on TikTok. It's affecting
Yeah.
my mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's it doing to your, you know, little spongy brain that you're absorbing all of that?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll avoid that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was all the craze, wasn't it, in lockdown, wasn't it?
Yeah.
TikTok. I did put my hands up. I did, but you know, I
Yeah.
can't now. It doesn't feel like a safe place.
Well, yeah, I think social media isn't a safe space, and I think there's a lot of work to be done to create that, and it's whether they're going to take responsibility for that. And they talk about it, but then they don't actually put their words into actions, do they?
Well, they keep shadow banning and banning really important stuff.
Yeah.
They let through racism and bullying.
Yeah.
Okay, how do it just like it just doesn't
Yeah.
work, doesn't add up.
Yeah.
So
No.
yeah, I'd like to see more regulation and more verification. So
Yeah.
when somebody actually opens an account, they need to actually have like photo ID and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that's a really good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they can be tracked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the maybe that would help with some of the cyberbullying or even help hold people accountable for it.
I was just going to say that word, accountability. And it's the kind of not just even on social media, it's in life, isn't it? People just need to we've lost that sense of accountability towards other human beings, I think.
It becomes so like throwaway. I
Yeah.
find like, you know, throw away with emotions, it's throw away with people.
Yeah.
It's almost like we've lost that tribal sense of connection and earthly connectivity to each other, and that spiritual connection. Well,
Yeah. But then you see stuff that's going on, like, you know, how awful it is with what's happening in Ukraine, and then you do see people connecting and coming together from across the world, and you do think, well, actually, there is some really good stuff going on with people.
I suppose in a sense it does matter what you look for. So if you look for these things, you're going to find them. You know, if you're going to look for the horrible comments, and you're going to listen to them and stuff like that, then that's what you're going to get more of. But if you actually surround yourself with kindness and kind people, and you actually look at, you know, like in the pandemic where people really came together in communities to help each other, I kind of had a little bit of faith restored in humanity. You know, we can't control what's going on in the Ukraine. Unfortunately, it's devastating, but we can do our bit for humanity. We can, you know, send a package over. We can, I don't know, just send out love. You know, just send out kindness to people to help raise those vibrations. But yeah, it's kind of helpless, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we can all do our bit for humanity.
Yeah, and keep looking for the positives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you so much for talking to me. It's been a pleasure to hear parts of your journey and what you're doing now. So as the show is called That Inner Voice, what does your inner voice say to you?
She now says to me that I am good enough, because I didn't feel like I was for a long time.
I love that. We are good enough. And what are you most excited about right now?
I'm excited to actually start doing the things that have been in my head for a long time that I've maybe not dared to do. And even in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been, wanting to create live events, and I've been holding myself back because it's never a done deal, this confidence thing, is it? You've got to keep building on it. And so now I've got to the point where I'm going ahead with them, and I'm really excited about that. And I can see how it's going to progress, and I really believe in it. So I'm excited about what this year's going to bring, and new opportunities. There's lots of different things coming up my way, because I'm keeping an open mind, and that's exciting to not know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and being comfortable with not knowing.
Yeah.
And I've seen that you've got a live event coming up for body confidence, the lingerie shoot.
Yeah, so I'm going to get 10 women together on May the 18th to all over 40 to come and join me for a lingerie shoot today in Chic Studios in Sheffield. And I just want people to feel empowered. It's not a set look. People will wear the lingerie that makes them feel good, whether it's a sports bra and big knickers, I don't care. Whatever makes them feel like Superwoman, then that's what it will be about. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I just know how it's made me feel more confident being able to do that. So I want to pass that on. So that's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. Well, I hope it goes well. I'm sure it will. Yeah, fabulous. And then, what is the best bit of advice you've ever been given?
This soon shall pass. It's not really advice, but a good friend of mine, when I was having a really tough time, bought me a little frame that said "This soon shall pass" quote, and I used to have it at the side of my bed. So it was the first thing I saw in the morning. So if I was having a bad time, I would remember that this soon will pass. And also now, even if it's something great that's happening, it's about remembering that to be in that moment and enjoy it, because it will go as quickly as it came. So yeah, that's something that stuck with me.
I do. I love that phrase.
Mm.
Yeah, I love that phrase, and it's been an important phrase in my life too, because it's knowing that nothing is permanent. Life is fluid, and in however dark or heavy that feels, it will pass. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that one. And thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. And so, where can people follow you?
You can find me on Instagram, Rachel Peru 1, or go and check the website out, rachelperu.co.uk, and the podcast and blogs and everything are all on there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Jen. Pleasure.
Right, and do tune in next time for another episode of That Inner Voice. It's bye from me. That was another episode of That Inner Voice. Do join me next time on the next episode. Bye for now.